The reason why you are right here right now is because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to watch this video. I'm not some big YouTuber. On the contrary, I have got a small channel. Nonetheless, you are still here, and it's because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to see this video. My name is Harun Ismail, and I'm a Muslim e-commerce advertiser. I help Muslim brands grow through paid advertising and also get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in this video, I'm going to showcase you a case study of mine that is going to reveal why it is that you are so frustrated with your advertising results, why it is that you can't get profitable ads, and why it is that every single ad agency that you have hired previously have failed you. Now, to be honest, this case study is going to be one of my Danish clients. I live in Denmark, Scandinavia, Denmark, and because the Muslim industry are rather small, I have chosen to not showcase the Muslim brands that I'm collaborating with due to privacy. Nonetheless, this case study is still highly relevant because I use the same frameworks for every client that I'm working with. Obviously, I work and communicate in a different way when I'm dealing with a Muslim audience, which I'm sure that you would understand. However, it's still the same frameworks. Lastly, if you are a Muslim brand owner that wants to grow here in 2025 and wants to add paid advertising on as a reliable sales channel and not only rely on organic marketing, feel free to book yourself a call directly in my calendar via the link in the description. With that said, hopefully you enjoy the case study. Jazakallah khair and assalamu alaikum. State of the art, how I grew this client of mine, a tile selling brand here in Denmark, by 77% in the span of 4 months by paid acquisition on Meta and offer creation. This case study is extremely relevant for you if you are the owner of an e-commerce store, perhaps the person responsible for the advertising in an e-commerce store, and you have had a hard time to break through the glass ceiling with your paid advertising, specifically on Meta in this case, facing rising ad costs, increased competition, and a society where consumers are getting more and more skeptical towards you as an online advertiser. And you can even implement these measures yourself that I'm going to potentially show you in this case study if you are facing the challenges that I'm going to list in just a second. And that's also why my primary task for my client portfolio, the companies that I work with, how we essentially can systematically and structured build a marketing mix or a advertising platform that can sustainably and long-term generate the results we desire, with the keywords here being sustainably and long-term. Now, the main problems that this client of mine had, but also main problems that I see in the e-commerce space, specifically the founders that aren't having success with the paid acquisition on Meta in 2024, is that they have no systematic approach to the advertising, no holistic approach to the advertising. They look at Meta specifically and judge the platform based on the ROAS of Meta and not look at the overall contribution from Meta as an advertising platform. And lastly, they lack expert knowledge, time, or perhaps the energy. Now, unfortunately, that also means that a lot of e-commerce founders out there go 2, 4, even 6 years without having a system for their paid advertising, which in the long run is a lot more costly and a lot more expensive for those founders. Now, why should you spend the next few minutes in my company, and why do I believe that I know something about paid acquisition on Meta, offer creation, and content creation that you can take knowledge from? Well, it's really simple. My name is Harun Ismail, and I am an entrepreneur based in Denmark. For the last few years, I have been running my own paid acquisition firm where I essentially help e-commerce brands all over the world scale through paid advertising. And the knowledge that you are going to acquire in this case study is knowledge that I have acquired myself by being in this space and working my way up. I'm also a 100% dedicated e-commerce growth partner. I only work with e-commerce owners, and that's why that you essentially know with certainty that the knowledge that you are going to acquire in this case study is knowledge that is industry specific to how you essentially scale e-commerce stores, nothing else. Now, the primary concept from this case study that I want you to apply, and the primary framework that I use for all of my client portfolio, is the framework and principles that you get and essentially acquire from the book Breakthrough Advertising. all of the companies that I work with do not become successful by some shiny object in the ads manager or whatever the case might be. The most or the fastest growing brands worldwide, but also my client portfolio see success with the paid advertising because of the principles from Breakthrough Advertising by Eugene Schwartz. So if you haven't read the book, I highly suggest that you search it up online, buy a copy, and read it as soon as humanly possible. Now, the primary reason why I could help this client, this specific client of mine, a tile selling brand here in Denmark, to essentially reduce its customer acquisition costs like crazy, drastically increase the number of conversion and profit on first-time customers, was, or essentially despite the brand having worked with several agencies before, was because we followed the criteria from Breakthrough Advertising, and we individualized those frameworks and essentially use them for our own use case. Now, the first chapter, and we are going to go over 4 chapters in this case that where I'm going to break down everything in depth. The first chapter is to understand your audience, and it might sound simple, but if you had an understanding of how many e-commerce stores that don't have a in-depth understanding of their audience, you will probably be shocked. Now, obviously, as advertisers, we must understand that we need to know our target audience better than they know themselves in order to create sustainably and long-term success with our marketing. And the primary parameters that I essentially build my target audience research on is: what is my target audience mass desire? And that's also something that I break down to first principle thinking. Secondly, how aware is my target audience practically speaking? And thirdly, how sophisticated is my target audience practically speaking? Obviously, I also have a lot of other details, and my target audience research is a lot more intricate than these 3 parameters, but in essence, these are 3 of the most essential parameters that you need to understand before you start creating advertising for your brand or for your store. Now, when we have essentially conducted in-depth research of our target audience, it also becomes much easier for us as advertisers to create creative angles in our advertising that resonate and essentially cut like a knife through warm butter and have a greater impact if we haven't done any research at all, or if we just essentially had done a half-ass research. Now, when I look at what my target audience mass desire is, I always try to break it down, or always break it down into first principle thinking. Reason why is because we humans buy something because of a psychological need. Now, as I said, this case study is built upon a tile selling brand here in Denmark. They sell tiles, and what I found out for this brand and for their target audience was that yes, you buy tiles because you have a need. Let's say that you're renovating your home, but you also buy tiles because you want to increase your self-esteem, or because you want to essentially increase the level of status in your peer group, because most of the consumers that buy our tiles do so because yes, they have a need, but secondly also because they want to show off in front of their friends and family, where they essentially can show how of a beautiful home they have got by acquiring those tiles that we obviously sell. Now, obviously, you need to individualize this for your own brand, and obviously that's what I did for this client. But you also have to understand why we humans buy something. Yes, we have a need, but psychologically there's more to it. And what I like to look at and what I like to essentially look and study is the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And if you can individualize this to your specific brand, you will have a much easier time to craft offers that essentially talk in terms of the mass desire of your audience, but also to create advertising that talk in terms of the mass desire of your audience. And that's exactly what I did. I took the learnings and I took my understanding of my target audience mass desire, which in this case was self-esteem and status amongst their peer group, and utilized it in my advertising efforts. Now, how aware is my target audience practically speaking? And in any given market, there are 5 stages of awareness. You have, as you can see on the graph, most aware, that's the people who are on the edge of buying. Product aware, that's people who know about your brand, that's people who know about your product, but aren't necessarily sure how well of a product you have. Solution aware, that's people in the market who understand the brand, that are selling the service or selling a product which can fulfill their problem. but they don't have an in-depth understanding of all of the brands. They just know that there are some companies out there that can fulfill their problem aware, obviously people who have a problem and is aware of it, and unaware. Now, what I focus on for all of my clients, but what I also focused on for this client specifically, was to market to the stages, which you can see here, problem aware and unaware. And that's also why I have inserted a ring around it, because most advertisers out there only focus on the most aware and the product aware, most aware, product aware, and solution aware market stages. And the reason why they do that is because obviously it's a lot easier for you as an advertiser to sell to a person in your funnel that is most aware or product aware. Obviously, I also focus on that, but when I do advertising specifically, I always try to focus 70% of my advertising efforts on problem aware and unaware market stages. And when I do that, obviously, it's going to be a lot harder for me as an advertiser, but I know that the competition in those market stages is almost zero to none. So that's why that if I can crack the code, so to say, in these stages, I would essentially gain the reward. Plus, it's also important for me to say that I always build out a funnel, which we are going to have a look at a bit later, where you essentially talk to all 5 stages of awareness, because in any given market, you will always have people in all 5 stages. You will always have people who are most aware, but you always have people who are problem and unaware. How sophisticated is my audience, practically speaking? This is also a key element to understand. Now, the 5 stages of awareness, the 5 stages of sophistication is on the right on the screen, and we can see that you have 5 stages. You have first to market, second to market, third stage, fourth stage, and fifth stage. If you don't know how sophisticated your audience is, you will have a harder time to actually create advertising that resonates with your audience. Now, you can essentially judge how sophisticated your market is based on how many that are selling the same offer, or how many people or brands that are selling similar offers. If you are in a market where you have a lot of different advertisers, a lot of different brands that are selling the same offer or a similar offer to you, obviously that market that you are selling to will naturally be more sophisticated, and by sophisticated I mean skeptical. Perhaps if you are, or vice versa, if you are in an industry that is where there is almost no competition, a pretty new industry, you will essentially be first to market, perhaps second to market, and therefore you will have an easier time to essentially craft advertising that resonates with your audience. Now, what you have to do if you are in an industry that is, let's say, first or second to market, is to be simple and direct. And what you have to do in an industry where this level of sophistication is penetrated, let's say fifth stage, you'll need to be more creative and align your advertising with your consumers as individuals. Now, in this case, for this client, I found out that the level of sophistication was at a fourth stage. So that just meant that I needed to craft a mechanism which was a lot better compared to what my competitors had, and that's concisely what we did, which I'm going to show you just in a bit. But when you understand all of those parameters, you will have a much easier time to develop creative angles in your advertising that resonate perfectly. And as I said earlier on in this case study, you can essentially craft advertising that cut like a knife through raw butter. And to give you a concrete example of what that looked like for this client of mine is what you can see on the screen right here. Now, I have taken an ad with me where you can see how we used all of those principles, all of those cutting edge frameworks, individualized them and used them in this case to essentially see profitable results from our paid acquisition on Meta. I'm not going to play the ad because it's in Danish, and I don't assume that you are a Dane watching this. However, you can see how we used all of those principles and individualized them, inserted them in our own advertising efforts to see more success. Chapter number 2, and perhaps one of the most foundational chapters as well, is optimization of our offers. Now, one of the most essential elements for achieving success with your paid advertising is your offers. Practically speaking, your offer is the product that you are selling to your target audience. And the reason why it's so important is because you have the most amount of leverage and can drive the greatest impact for your business at your offer stack. Now, the reason why this client of mine previously had such a hard time to scale his paid advertising efforts on Meta profitably was because he was trying to push his high AOV offers front end, which simply doesn't work in his industry. As I said, this client of mine is selling tiles, and obviously tiles is a product of a high AOV. In this case, my client have a average order value of 8,000 Danish kroner. Now, when you have such a high AOV, you will obviously naturally see a low conversion rate, and you will have a much harder time to acquire first-time customers profitably, because there's such a huge gap for the customer to take when he or her essentially need to buy tiles. And that's also why so many people buy tiles in store, because they want to have a feel for the product. They want to see the product, the quality of the product, the design of the product, the style of the product. And in this industry specifically, you just can't scale your advertising efforts with you pushing your high AOV offers front end. It simply just doesn't work. Now, what I did for this client of mine was to essentially revamp his offer stack. So what we did was to introduce a new offer, a new low friction offer, and a low friction offer that made it possible for us to actually scale. And what we essentially implemented was a product sample of the tile, the specific tile you wish, at 99 Danish kroner, which is approximately $15. So what we can do, and what we did in this case, was go out to the market and say, hey, you actively don't need to purchase let's say a large order of, let's say 10,000 or 8,000 Danish kroner, whatever it might be. You can essentially purchase this low friction offer, a product sample for $15, where you can get the specific tile that you wish for a really, really low rate, where you can essentially see the product, you can see the design of the product, the quality of the product, you can get a feeling for the product before you then later convert with a much higher AOV. And that's concisely what I did for this client. Now, that low friction offer was an offer that pretty much changed everything for us. And what that offer did was it allowed us to scale our paid advertising effort, because in this industry and for most of the companies in this industry, they only essentially utilize the paid advertising efforts for people who are most aware or product aware. And what I mean by that is that if you have to acquire a customer and you push your high AOV offers front end, most likely you will only acquire customers who are on the edge of buying. You can't talk to a problem or unaware stage in your marketing funnel, because those types of customers are at the start of your buying journey. So it's pretty much impossible for you to scale if you don't essentially look at your offer stack and see how you can implement a product sample, as I did for this client. Now, this product sample also made it a lot easier for us to acquire customers who are problem aware and unaware, because it's just such a low friction offer. For $15, you can get the specific time that you wanted. And that's also why we could revamp his advertising efforts and quite quickly already scale his budget 3x while remaining profitable. Now, as I said, we essentially crafted a low friction offer, and I have actually taken two ads with me here so you can see what it looked like. Now, on the ad to the left, you can see that the founder is essentially on an ad, making a few product samples for customers that have essentially ordered that. And you can see that it's a little piece of that specific tile that you want, which you can get for a really, really low rate. And long story short, it worked wonders. And I have taken a screenshot with me here from our Shopify dashboard. Obviously, this is just a few orders, but it has just allowed us to scale. And as I said previously, and as this slide says, that has literally changed everything for us, because we have been able to scale our advertising efforts front end. We don't have to essentially rely on a long customer journey or retention or lifetime value. We can scale with front end profitability, and that's also why we could free his spend quite quickly and just revamp his advertising on Meta quite quickly. And that specific product sample offer have also worked as an ad liquidator and improved the overall health of the business. What I mean by that is that in most cases, we can almost go break even selling a product sample. And when we go break even selling a product sample, we can essentially acquire a customer later on, or we have already acquired the customer, but we can acquire a high AOV order later on, but let's say 12,000 Danish kroner, and only have the COGS of that order, meaning that previously when he needed, or when he got a sale of, let's say, for easy maths, 12,000 Danish kroner, he would essentially have his advertising spend and his COGS, which is cost of goods sold. But in this case, we can essentially eliminate our advertising spend from such an offer, because that is getting liquidated front end by our product sample offers. And when we essentially acquire that large order of high AV, the only thing that the owner have to pay is obviously for the goods sold. So we essentially don't have to pay any advertising spend, and that have overall increased the profitability of the company a lot. And the company is a lot more healthier now, because we can use this as an ad liquidator and also gain a competitive advantage in this industry specific, which obviously have allowed us to capture more market share. Now, this is of course a bit of a intricate example, I would say. So if you're in a position where you don't sell types and you still want to improve your offer stack or increase the perceived value of your offer, what you can do is look at Alex Hormozi's value equation and use that to increase the overall perceived value of your offer, which will also give you a competitive advantage and help you acquire more market share. Now, chapter number 3 is creative strategy. And an element that is also extremely essential, specifically when it comes to online advertising, it's content. Content is one of the secrets behind all of my partners' success on paid advertising when it comes to Meta. And on Meta, 56% of the results that you see actually come from the creatives that you use. And in this case of Flisebørsen, we had really great success with low cost, informal, down-to-earth video and image content filmed on an iPhone. And I have actually taken a breakdown with me here so you can see what it looked like. Now, for this client, we have pretty much tried everything that you can possibly imagine when it comes to creatives, because obviously I were in a position where previous agencies did a poor job, so I needed to find out which creative angles that resonated with our audience. So we have tried high production, low production, UGC, static ads, content filmed on an iPhone, simple images, everything that you can possibly imagine. And 10 out of 10 times, the winning ads, the ads that take majority spend in the ad account and the ads that just outperform like crazy, is the ads that the founder have filmed himself on his own iPhone and simply talks about the problems of the industry, the problems that his target audience is facing, how our offers can essentially solve that. Now I have taken 3 ads with me here where you can see that these 3 ads are all top of funnel creatives, meaning that we are pushing these creatives to a market pool where the average customer is, say, problem aware or unaware. And that's also why we focus on our product samples. And if we are not focusing on our product samples, we are trying to evoke a sense of mass desire in our audience, meaning that we want to show our target audience how they can elevate their status and how they can get more self-esteem by these amazing tiles that we are obviously selling. Now, if we go a bit more in depth with our creative strategy and talk about the creatives that we use, bottom of funnel, mid of funnel, you can see that again, it's creatives that is filmed on an iPhone, fully raw, not even edited or anything. And obviously when we are advertising to a market stage that is, let's say, product aware or most aware, we just want to push an offer. We want to push a logical reason for our target audience to convert. So I have had the founder film ads specifically for our hero products and our hero collections, where he talks about the offer specifically, because when we are advertising to a product aware audience, they already know who we are, but they just don't understand how good of an offer that we really have. So that's why we talk in terms of how amazing our offers are, what makes it unique, and why they should convert at our store compared to our competitors. And you can see for yourself that the founder is specifically talking about our hero collections, which again have worked wonders. Now, chapter number 4, which is ad account structure. And just before I go in depth with the ad account structure, I just wanted to conclude on the creative strategy, which is obviously very different from brand to brand. In this case, this type of creatives performed really, really well. And the reason why I did that is simply because it resonated with our audience a lot more than high cost and, high end content did. You have to test for yourself and you have to test for your own brand to essentially find out what works. But the benefits of having this content work extremely well was obviously that we can pump out extremely much content. We can pump out almost infinitive amounts of videos and images because it's low cost, doesn't take too much time, and it's easily made on an iPhone. But you have to you have to test for yourself and find out for your own e-com store. Now, chapter number 4 is ad account structure, and that's perhaps one of the most exciting chapters in this case study, and the most frequent question that I get as an advertising agency for e-commerce stores is, how do I create a structure in my ad account that is the most beneficial? And I can understand that, but what I want you to focus on for your own paid advertising efforts when it comes to Meta specifically is not how your ad account is looking, because you can do CBO, ABO, cost cap, bid cap, whatever the case might be. But if you understand your audience, if you have great offers with unrivaled unit economics and have dialed in your creative strategy, you are going to scale no matter how your ad account is looking. That doesn't really matter. It's obsolete, I would say, almost. So what I want you to focus on is your audience and your offers, your content, angles, and funnel, and then your ad account. And as you can see here, this is pretty much what I call the hierarchy of needs for e-commerce stores wanting to scale through paid advertising on Meta. Don't focus too much on your ad account structure, because if you have all of these elements dialed in, you're going to scale regardless of how your ad account looks. Now, with that said, I would still love to show you what our ad account structure looked like, and I have essentially just illustrated it here. You can see that overall we have the ad account, and I essentially have 3 campaigns running. In this is the setup that I use for all of my clients, but let's just say for this case study, I had 3 campaigns running. That you can see that we have 2 campaigns, which is a CBO, two CBOs, or top of funnel campaign, and 1 CBO, bottom of funnel campaign. Now, the offers that I run in these top of funnel CBO campaigns is a little bit different. In one of the campaigns, I obviously have the product sample offer that we are pushing to a funnel stage of problem aware and unaware, and in some cases solution aware. But I also have a CBO campaign specifically for my top of funnel segment that is with my high AOV orders. And the reason why I have that is because obviously there will always be a percentage of the market that is going to convert on those offers front end. So that's why I also have it. It kind of works in a conglomerate cohesively. So obviously we have, let's just take this example. We have one top of funnel campaign with 2 ad sets. One ad set is with the purpose of essentially testing different concepts, different creatives, different angles. And the second ad set is essentially just to collect all of your winning creatives, winning angles, and winning ads into one ad set. And when you essentially have the budget on CBO, you can be sure that Facebook is going to spend your money where it's most profitable. So if they spend your money on, let's say, your testing ad set rather than your scaling ad set, you know that you have a few creatives in your testing ad sets that you need to look at now. And that pretty much goes the same for the second top of funnel campaign. Thirdly, I have a CBO bottom of funnel campaign, and that's pretty much just with one ad set with the purpose of collecting and testing different creatives for my bottom of funnel track, as I call it. Now, here's what I want you, or here's what I would recommend you to focus on in your ad account. First and foremost, simplicity. Second of all, leverage Facebook's algorithm. Let the algorithm do the work for you. Thirdly, test primarily based on creative angles. You can always do iterations of your winners, but if you don't have enough concepts, test on your creative angles. And 4, optimize primarily based off your blended metrics. Don't look specifically on your Facebook ad account and judge based on that. You have to judge based on the entire or your total advertising spend. You can look at, a few different metrics or KPIs. But what I always recommend is to look at your blended metrics of your brand back in and see how, it's performing. And obviously then, what you then you will have an easier time to, kind of kind of know if Facebook is actually performing well or not. Now, wrapping up this case study, overall, this client of mine, Felice person, now have a healthier and more predictable and profitable business. And if you're in a case where you know that you have a lot more potential than what you're currently fulfilling, and you want a specialized partner or a specialized agency that can help you scale profitably, long-term and sustainable through paid acquisition on Meta, I would love to hear from you, and you can send me an email on the email that I have laid out. Now, with that said, regardless of you are an e-com store owner or an advertising agency, I hope that you learned something from this case study. Make sure that you follow along on the channel. Make sure that you drop a like, subscribe, and leave a comment with some feedback. And with that said, I wish you a lovely day. Thank you for watching this case study. That's everything from me. Take care.